The title of the talk is The Secret Lives of Owls. So I'm going to talk about owls in general and some specific cases. So let's see what this talk gives you. I hope that you will learn a lot, many new things. So this is a public talk and it is designed for everyone. So irrespective of your interest, you can join in the talk. So the best way to understand owls and to see them, watch them in the nature is by closing your eyes and listening to their songs. That is the best way to connect with these nocturnal birds, which are generally active during night times. So I request all of you to take 2 minutes. Please close your eyes and just listen to the music that I'm going to present to you and imagine what's happening. And after this music is over, I'm going to ask you, what did you feel and how many species do you think of owls are there in this song? So please listen carefully.
Pankaj, there's no sound here coming out.
Okay. So shall I replay it? How many of you did not get any sound?
I think most of them didn't hear anything. That's why the chat box, if you look at it,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
all saying. Probably you disabled your headphone. Then play it again, please.
Oh,
It's
okay,
probably.
fine. I'll just redo this.
Pankaj?
Still no sound.
No sound.
Okay, fine. All right, so this is a failed experiment, I see. All right, so anyway, I will go ahead. Maybe in a video you will get to listen more. So the idea was to introduce you with the cryptic sounds that we get in the nature. And as we drive from the urban areas where generally we dwell into the forest, myself, my name is Pankaj Kopade. I am an evolutionary ecologist and also an assistant professor with MIT World Peace University at Pune. I head a lab called Chatur Ullu Lab. I know this is a very funny name. Chatur means dragonfly and Ullu means owls. And I work on owls and dragonflies, that's why the name. I work with a diverse group of people who are interested in biogeography, diversity and distribution, urban ecology, biodiversity informatics, and conservation outreach. I'm also an admin of certain citizen science group like Dragonfly South Asia, Owl India, and so on. And I'm also a Marathi writer. Here you can see a picture of one of my study species. This is a jungle owlet, dragonfly, the beautiful landscape of the northern Western Ghats where forest owlets are seen. And this is a subset of my team, and we are all enjoying dragonflies at a waterfall. So this is me, and I'm going to talk today about the owls. So the structure of my talk is very simple. I have identified four sections.
Pankaj, that slide haven't come up. So sorry to button in between. I think
Okay,
that's
okay.
the slide is stuck there. The close your eyes, listen to the music.
Okay,
That slide.
okay.
Please change the
All
slide.
right. All right. So let me stop the sharing and redo it. I'm sorry for this trouble.
It's okay. Take your time.
Now, is this okay? Is this visible?
Yeah, it's fine.
So I'm on the second slide. I'm moving to the third slide, which was my introduction. And I just talked about it, so I'm not going to repeat it, but you can see that I work with a diverse group of people, and this is some of the people who work with me. And this is one of the landscapes, a beautiful landscape of dry deciduous forest where forest owlets are found. And this is a jungle owlet, which is a study species of mine. So in today's talk, I'm going to mainly talk about these four sections: the secret lives of owls, their characteristics, their biology, why owls are so mysterious and what is so special about them, the urban nightscape, about which I think nobody really talks. What is the nightlife in urban areas? Well, nightlife is for humans, but for animals as well, there is a nightlife, and it's really interesting. What are the threats to owls? What are their conservation requirements? And then we will conclude the talk, and then we will open for question and answer session. So I'm really acknowledging this image given by Neeraj Sureja. I have used many images of owls, mainly not taken by me, but many photographers who have contributed. So wherever there is an image, I have put the acknowledgements. So I think it's a good way to thank them. So let's move in the first chapter, that is the secret lives of owls. So let's learn about them. What are owls and what are the characteristics of them? So we know that there is something called photoperiodism in animals, and based on this photoperiodism, animals are classified into various classes. So species which are active during daytime, they are called as diurnal animals. Species which are active at night time, they are called nocturnal. There is a group of species which are active during dawn and dusk. So they are generally called as crepuscular species. Some species may be diurnal and as well as nocturnal or crepuscular. So there is quite an overlap between the activity period of the animals, and it keeps on differing a lot. So here are some examples of the species. For example, chimps are diurnal, the rabbits and hare are crepuscular species, bats are nocturnal, owls mostly are nocturnal species. And then there are species such as otters, which are uh, active during night as well as in daytime. So they are metaternal. So we will be talking mainly about the nightscape, the night, the darkness, and the animals which are active and which are also a symbol of night, that is owls. So let's look at which other species of animals are active during nighttime. And this is relevant, very relevant as we move ahead in the talk. So you will understand why this particular graph is very relevant. So you can see a lot many bat species, almost 100% of them are nocturnal. A lot many amphibian, many mammals are nocturnal. Many invertebrates are nocturnal. Now this is very interesting, mammals and invertebrate. And the primate species also, there is a good proportion which are nocturnal. So we see that there is a lot of fauna that is active during nighttime. And as we talk about owls, owls are referred as birds of prey. So they generally feed on lizards, mammals, and insects. So nighttime is also a very good time for hunting. So their resource locations, there is a huge amount of proportion of resources which are located in the nighttime, night duration of the 24-hour cycle. And someone has to be there to exploit this niche. And that is where owls come into picture. So since we are talking about niche, niche is generally referred as function of an animal in the ecosystem. So the question that why owls are nocturnal is it has an evolutionary explanation attached to it. So here are some warbler species you can see, and these warbler species, they all feed on a particular species of tree. Well, they are insectivorous, and they feed on insects on which are found in a particular species of tree. But to avoid competition, they can specialize in different parts of the tree. So some species become middle canopy specialists, some species become upper canopy, lower canopy, and so on. Some species will feed on insects at the edges of the canopy, and so on. So this way, the warblers are segregating themselves, and they are becoming specialized in feeding on certain fauna, so that the competition is reduced and everyone gets to eat. So similarly, the resource partitioning and niche separation are the two main reasons why owls are the way they are. They are the nocturnal animals, nocturnal predators, who feed on a large proportion of nocturnal animals. So there are so many characteristics of owls. It's one slide is not enough to list them all. And I think most of us are not aware of all these beautiful creatures and the fantastic characters they have evolved over time. And we tend to underestimate a lot. We really tend to underestimate owls a lot. And in Hindi, there is a word called ullu for owls. And ullu also, the synonym of ullu is also stupid. So we tend to call them stupid and foolish creatures because of their big eyes and their very abnormal kind of posture and so on, and their abnormal habits. But actually, if you look at from the evolutionary perspective, from the ecological perspective, owls, they are very important in ecosystem, and they have evolved such beautiful characters which are really amazing. So these are mainly solitary animals, and they are nocturnal birds of prey. Even many ornithologists, there is a divide in ornithologists. Some people say owls are not birds of prey. Some people say they are birds of prey. So birds of prey are generally, the raptors are generally referred as birds of prey, and then there are two divides. So there is again underestimation at the level of scientists too. So owls typically have a upright posture. They appear as if they are standing, and they have broad heads. They have a binocular vision, and they have binaural hearing. So their ears are asymmetrically placed on their head, and that is a way to gauge the distance and depth of the prey. So we will see a video in which it will get clear. They have they are hunting niche, so they are predatory in nature. They have sharp talons to capture the prey, and their feathers are adapted for silent flight. So this is again something that we will see in another video, and this is an amazing video that has been becoming viral nowadays. So there are two extant families of owls, Titonidae and Stygidae. So all the owls in the world are classified into these two. Of course, before these two, there were multiple species, multiple families in the evolutionary tree of life, but over the time, those have gone extinct. So owls, the ancient owls evolved around 60 million years ago, and over the period of time, they have developed. Titonidae family is considered as an old family, and the Stygidae family is called the new or the younger family. So let's move ahead and see what all information we can generate. So I was talking about the asymmetrical position of the ear and also their hunting habit. So I'm going to play a video, and hopefully the sound of the video will be audible to everyone. If not, please post in your comment box. If there is problem, I can.
Pankaj,
Yeah.
sorry to butt in. There is some window is coming into your. Can you see that? Yeah, now
Yeah, I
it's
can
gone.
see that, but I don't know how
Can
to
you?
remove that. Please
I think
move
it's
this
gone. It's
window
gone.
away from the
Thank you.
shared application. So I don't
Yeah, I
know.
think it's gone. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to play this. If there is any problem in sound, please let me know. I will open another window.
Pankaj, there's no sound.
Ah, okay. All right.
And
So
also, can you try to please
I
move
can try
this
it in
window?
another application. So
Also, that box coming. No, please move this window away from the shade
yeah,
small
yeah, I
icon.
don't know how to do that. Just give me a minute. Let me try another. I'll open it in the Windows Media Player if that works. I'm
Share
really
your
sorry
screen.
for all this
No problem.
mess.
Take your time. Still, there is no sound. Sorry to button again.
Yeah, yeah, sure. I can give a commentary. So this is a great horned owl, and uh, basically this documentary is about how the owl locates the prey. So the owl is sitting on a perching site up high, and then it is trying to locate the prey. So the ear tufts that you are looking at, they are actually simply feathers. They are not real ears. Ears are inside, and ears are situated asymmetrically on the head. One ear is slightly upwards, and another ear is slightly downwards. And also, also you can see that the owl's eyes are huge, and uh, because of these huge eyes, they fit perfectly in the orbital, and the owl is not able to move the eyelids, or sorry, move the eyeballs. So it has to move its neck, and the owls have developed such a rotation, the flexible neck joint, that they can move their neck in 270 degrees. So the owl is locating the prey based on the vision as well as the sound coming in two different ears. So there is a lag of sound because of the asymmetrical position of the ears. And once the target is locked based on these three signals, sound coming from left ear, right ear, and the vision, based on that, it locks the target and then jumps on it. And the last sentence of this documentary was the mouse is killed and the mouse will never know what struck it, because it was, a backward attack. And another interesting thing about owls is that unlike other raptors, they generally don't make bites and pieces. They simply gulp the whole mouse, and they have very strong stomach juices. They can basically, let me just switch to the another window. So because of the very strong stomach juices, they don't really need to make pieces. Also, there is something called an owl pellet. So there are undigested material of bones of species which owls regurgitate, and then they throw it out in the form of pellet. Okay, moving forward. So how many owls are there globally and in India? So owls, as I said earlier, that they belong to the order Strigiformis, and there are two families, Titonidae and Strigidae. So Titonidae family members are Titos or Phodeus. So you can see the genus Phodeus, and sorry, this is Coxall. So Titonidae family members, I think, are not here in this. Yeah, there is one Titonidae family member. So the barn owls, the Titos, and the bay owls, the Phodeus, they are the Titonidae family members, and The most other owls are Strygeri family members. So Strygeri family is younger than Tytonidae. Globally, there are around 218 species, and in India, around 37 species occur. And these numbers slightly they vary because some species are migratory, and sometimes the occurrences are not properly known. So these statistics is not robust; it keeps on changing. But this is a very beautiful collage of all the bird portraits, the owl portraits, and you can see how fearsome and how weird looking birds these are. And this is also a reason why people are really afraid of owls, and they think that owls bring death. And in fact, there are a lot many myths and disbeliefs regarding owls. So we'll come to that as we go ahead. So if you move to the forest, and if I mean in the soundtrack I had added some data, some sounds of these species: oriental scops owl, brown hawk owl, and spot-billed eagle owl. So some of the beautiful species which occur in forest areas, and if you just go in the dense forest, you will listen to their songs. Very beautiful songs they have, and that is again a primary signal for us to identify which species is located where. The spot-billed eagle owl is, it is sometimes called as the ghost of the forest because its sound is really scary, and it's if you are alone in the forest, then definitely is the scariest thing to happen to you in your life. So the ornithologists have described its sound as if a woman has been stabbed and she is screaming for help. And I have experienced this when I was working in Koina Wildlife Sanctuary during 2012. So I was sitting on the shore of the backwaters. This was 2 o'clock at night, and I had just listened to a leopard across the shore, and it was making sound. So I was already scared, and there was this screaming sound came like this kind of sound. This is what exactly it sounds like. And this kind of sound came, and I just rushed. I didn't know what exactly it was. This was the first time I was listening to the spot-billed eagle. I i did know that spot-billed eagle owl sound is something like that, but at that moment I was really scared. And this amazing, I mean, these kind of experiences make you love owls more and more. Well, brown hawk owl and oriental scops owl have more melodious songs, but yeah, some owl songs are really scary. So these are some of the forest dwellers, and if you have seen them, then you are the most luckiest person on the planet. And there are some urban counterparts: barn owl, spotted owlet, and mottled wood owl. So barn owl and spotted owlet, I think many of us might have seen, and they are also found in, just in our backyard, and they are quite urban species as such. So a lot of work has been done on barn owls and spotted owlet because, again, it's very easy to work on them because they are just there. Mottled wood owls are generally found in old growth forest, but they are also found in old urban forests or urban gardens. So one of our field site is in Marathwada region in Aurangabad district, and in that there is an urban garden, which is a very old urban garden, and there's quite a population of mottled wood owl there. It's a beautiful species, again endemic to India. Spotted owlet is endemic to Indian subcontinent, and barn owl is quite widespread. It's a global species. So a lot of studies have been conducted on barn owl, and these are the life stages of barn owl. You can see how from an egg, how they hatch and how they develop, and once they get the feathers, they really become beautiful species. So barn owl is actually, if you look at the adult, it's one of the most beautiful bird that I have ever seen. It has really beautiful feather, and the structure, the coloration of shades of gray and then brown, it's really amazing. And as I mentioned, that owls can move their neck into 70 degrees. So here is a barn owl doing some acrobatic action. So it has turned its head upside down. Beautiful species these are. And that's what they makes them super cool. I mean, there are so many adaptations and so many characteristics which have, evolutionary has been evolved in them, and we still think that they are crazy, stupid, and they are weird animals, but actually they are not. They are really super cool. So there was one more video, and I think I will just play it, and I will keep on talking so that you will know. But this is more pictorial, so I think you will enjoy this video. And this video, I think many of you might have already seen, because this is making rounds on internet. So let me open it in another window so that you don't get that disturbing sign. Okay, okay. Just a minute. Okay, I'm not able to see the screen here.
First share screen.
Yeah, I'm just trying that, but it's not appearing. Yeah, okay. All right, I think now you can see it. So I think this is a video many of you might have seen. Here is an experiment done by these researchers. So they have put up a very strong microphones, and there are multiple species of birds which move from one end to the another. And while doing that, the mics keep on recording the flight of the birds and the sound the feathers make. So they first tried with a pigeon, then there was a peregrine falcon, then this third bird, that is the barn owl, Tyto alba. So there are three species, and these guys are discussing that they didn't hear anything, nothing at all, and they're very happy about it. So here is again the same same series in a slow motion, so that you can actually see the sound waves generated by the pigeon's flight. So here is the visual of the noise, the noise the feathers make. That was for pigeon. This is for peregrine falcon. So very sharp decrease and increase in frequency you can see, and that's what makes them different. While a barn owl flies, there's almost nothing. Now the same thing they are showing on a software. Now these are sonograms. You can see if there is anything as the barn owl flies. So you can see that they are experiencing that there is complete silence, there is no noise at all. So you can see that straight line, there is very little fluctuation, but otherwise it's almost like a straight line. And to show this further, they have done some more animations, and I think that will get more clearer. So when a pigeon flies, it does make a lot of noise, and we all have experienced it. And that noise is really annoying for some of us who are living in pigeon countries. So they have basically created a layer of feathers on the ground. And as the pigeon flies over it, this is the kind of turbulence it creates. So all the feathers are sort of, moving around. So that's the air turbulence that the pigeon is creating while it flies. And that is also what makes the noise. While the peregrine falcon moves, peregrine is a very strong bird with a very strong flight. So when it moves, it creates much more turbulence than the pigeon. And you can see that the feathers are almost all gone in the air. So a lot of turbulence you can see. While as the barn owl flies, so yeah, you guessed right, very smooth, no turbulence at all. just some whisker. So this is what makes them the silent killers of night. So there is almost no turbulence, there is just whisker. And at the end, when the Bano lands, you can see some sort of whisker. So this is again because of long feathers, and the feathers are designed in such a way that they make very minimal sound, and this is very important for the bird because the birds are nocturnal predators and they have to operate in a very minimal sound. Okay, so moving forward, I think both those videos would have worked better if we would have, I don't know, some technical problem here, but let it be. Okay, so let's move on to the second chapter, that is the urban nightscape. And as I told you earlier, that uh, urban nightlife is for humans, but nightlife is also for animals, and light is a very essential factor, governing the metabolism of many animals and also governing their circadian rhythms. So let's talk about urban nightscape. What happens at night in urban areas? So we all know that dogs become suddenly active and they form groups and they keep on, moving around. Perhaps because the human activity is very less. And as the dogs come out, we also know that in urban areas, even the biggest of metro cities, we have species like leopards who are moving around. Also, sometimes called as dark night. This is a picture from Mumbai, and this is near the Borivali. So you can see that there are many species of mammals and birds and bats which are active during the nighttime. So in urban areas, there is a lot of light pollution, and that light can affect the activities of animals, which are actually nocturnal animals who are adapted for the darkness. So nobody really talks about light pollution. Light pollution is a direct proxy of richness of a country and also the development of a country. And with development comes a lot many anthropogenic factors which actually affect wildlife a lot, and light is one of them. So here is a map of the world, and this is from 2017. So the lit up areas are either densely populated or richer, or indeed both. So this is what the analysis tells you. So you can see if you look at the USA part, uh, you can see that there is extensive use of light, while whereas in many countries, for instance, even in India, there is a lot of light usage, and this is either because we are densely populated or we are rich. So I think I'll go with the first argument that we are densely populated. If you look at Africa, then because these are developing countries and perhaps again not densely populated, you can see that there is a very little light all across the continent. But there are certain continents which definitely has a lot of density of light. And light generally affects many animals with, due to different reasons. It can affect their reproduction, it can affect their behavior, it can affect their activities and so on. So there are multiple ways by which light can really affect. Even for us, like when we need sleep, we close the curtains, we switch off the light, and then we sleep. And that's because the melatonin hormone gets activated when we are in the dark area. So we also need a lot of darkness to be active, and the nocturnal animals definitely need darkness for their daily activities and for their betterment of their course of evolution and ecology. So here is another composite image again from NASA 2017. And here this composite image basically shows how the utilization of light has been spread across the world. And you can see that certain countries are they are becoming a suction point for light. So here in case of Eurasia, the Europe is sort of sucking the whole light from the European region, and also from the Middle East and African region. And in case of USA is sort of sucking light from everywhere. So there are of course disproportionate distribution of nightlight and distribution of the things that come with the nightlight. That is the development. So let's see the case of India and how it affects India. So here is a GIF image. I think you all can see it. I'm really sorry for that block that's in between. So this is a comparative between 1993 to 2013. And you can see that there is an intensification of light that's happening. So this is night light intensification either reflects that we are becoming more dense, also reflects that we are developing and we're building more infrastructure, and that's why the night light is coming up. Now this is something inevitable. Night light is going to be there, and we can't really, we can't say that night light is not good for wildlife and we are going to switch it off. It's not going to happen. So it's just that, but we can regulate the usage. We can, at times we don't really require light and we just switch it on. Well, not in our homes, but outside, like on porches and so on. So nightlight intensification is a real major problem, but not really a lot many people talk about it. Not a lot of research has been conducted, especially in the case of India. Okay, so if you see the nightlight intensification graphs across the countries, there are some countries in which the nightlight intensification has happened with a larger proportion, and in some countries it is slow or stabilized. Okay, so for instance, in United States, it's 100%. So there is no more increase because it is already, it has already reached to the saturation. But countries like India, Pakistan, and Brazil, so we are picking up linearly, we are increasing our nightlight consumption and also establishment. So also, if you look at another countries like Afghanistan, they have also taken up the route of increasing the nightlight. So worldwide, there is an increasing trend in nightlight, and that is one of the major concern for the nocturnal animals or the owls. So how do you recognize the light pollution? So you tell me, when was the last time you saw the clear sky, excellent dark sky? I think if you're a city dweller, then perhaps you never have seen a night sky or a dark, excellent dark sky. Perhaps because we are all under lockdown for many days now, the pollution levels have gone down, and perhaps you are able to see some stars in the sky. Well, I am able to see some stars every day in the night, but I think I remember that a few months back or a few years back, I was not able to see them. And this is again because there is a lot of usage of light in the urban areas, as well as there is air pollution, because of which the lights are obscured, and because of which you can't see the dark sky. So the dark sky is very essential for many animals because they can navigate using certain directions, and they can definitely, if there is light pollution, then that affects them. They get attracted to the artificial light, and they may simply lose time in feeding, or they may get disoriented. So let's jump into the third chapter, that is threats to owl. There are many threats to talk about. There are some direct threats, there are some indirect threats. So let's first talk about the direct threats. So the major direct threat to owl population in India especially, and the South Asian countries, is the trade, the owl trade. So there was this report published in 2010 called Imperiled Custodians of the Night. This is available online and for free download. You can check this up. And again, there are many news articles that came up after this report was published. So this report basically talked about religious practice happening in India, and about which nobody was really talking about. So they say that there is a black magic behind illegal owl trade in India, and that is quite a serious. Uh, it's a serious crime that's happening in India every year. So what happens exactly? So during the Diwali time, owls are sacrificed to please Goddess Lakshmi. So here is a story. Mythically, owls are considered as Vahana for Goddess Lakshmi in Hindu mythology, and that's why people believe or disbelieve that if you sacrifice an owl, then you will get rich, and that's really stupid and nonsense. Nothing of that sort happens. I have worked on owls for many years for my PhD, but I don't think I have still reached the saturation of richness. So yeah, it doesn't really work. If you work with owls or sacrifice them, no, nothing happens. So in fact, owls are also in Greek mythology. Also, owls are considered as a good omen, and they are associated with the goddess Athena. So there is a whole genus of owls, Athene genus. The spotted owlet is Athene Brahma. Athene means the goddess Athena, and the Brahma is goddess god Brahma. So they are in Hindu mythology, Greek mythology, and they are placed in a very high position and posture. But owl sacrifice is actually really absurd, and it is complete nonsense. But owl sacrifice picks up during Diwali time in India, and that's a really huge threat for many owls. So depending upon the size of the owl, whether it's a small owl or a big owl, the prices vary. And if I mean, many times these people, they also paint the owls with artificial colors, and they make them look white, because the barn owls get higher prices because they look neat and cleaner as compared to these dusky owls, or the brownish colored owls. So the owls are painted, they are harassed, they are kept in a very bad conditions, and eventually they are sacrificed. So this is a really bad practice, and this is direct implication of how we are uh, we are actually affecting their populations. So there are staggering numbers of owl trade, and this is actually a huge crime that we are committing every year. The second type of crime that's more into the educated crowd of India and the South Asian countries is that there was an obsession recently about having that white colored snowy owl, which was there in Harry Potter movie. So this Harry Potter's pet is Hedwig, and many people, many families, or the kids in the families, they insisted that they want a pet like Hedwig, a snowy owl. And in fact, there was a peak in the market of the snowy owls after this film was released, and there is actually a paper on it. So I want you guys to look for these links, and you can check up some more information about this. So this particular report, again by Traffic, in the market for extinction, is a really amazing write up about the owl trade. And this one paper, which was published in Global Ecology and Conservation, the DOI link is given here. So they mentioned that there was a spike in the trade of the snowy owls, and that spike was, earlier it was in the market, the proportion was 0.06% of all the birds, and since 2008 the spike has been 0.43%. That is a sevenfold increase in the trade of snowy owls. So this is really amazing, and this basically shows how stupid we as a generation are. So these are the direct threats. There are some more direct threats, and habitat loss and habitat degradation are definitely one of the major threats to many species. Here is a forest owlet. Since I worked on forest owlet for really long, I thought that I should put a picture. This is an endangered bird found in central India and northern Western Ghat, and the population is supposed to be very small. The species is a dry deciduous forest species, and I mean there are not many reports. So it's very difficult to talk about this particular species. A lot of habitat loss and degradation is happening in the current distribution range of the species, so that's a big concern. Increasing light pollution is definitely bad for many nocturnal animals, just like, and also owls. Many times there are barriers for movement. So night light can also create barriers for movement. Uh, Owls may avoid intense light, and intense light basically acts as a barrier for them. It may not act as a barrier for many other species, but for species which are sensitive to light, it may. And poaching and hunting is a regular practice at many places, and that may also affect. Also, as the Traffic report mentions, the trade of owls is again classified under poaching and hunting. One major indirect impact is through the rodenticide. So many farmers extensively use pesticides and rodenticides on their crops. These are chemicals which are sprayed, and rats, they do eat it and they die. And when the owls eat those rats, then they also die. So this is a direct process of bioaccumulation and biomagnification. And many owls die because of this. So just like snakes, owls also control rodent population. They're actually a very good rodenticide, the natural rodenticide. And one a barn owl can eat up 1,000 rodents in a year, so that's a huge amount. And you can consider, if those are 500 pairs of rodents, how many more rodents they will, give rise to. So it's a biological control. And there is a huge movement going on in the owl scientist community that they are promoting owls as a biological control in farmers. And this is not only for India, but also in European countries as well as in other countries. um, the owl scientists are reaching to the farmers, and then they are telling them the importance of owls in controlling the population of rodent, and how they should not use rodenticides, uh, or use very minimal amount of it, so that the owls are not killed. So barriers could be physical as well as indirect barriers like light, and the direct impact of barriers could also be getting trapped in wire meshes like this. And there are of course other casualties that we will see. So I earlier talked about the light pollution and how it impacts the wildlife. So this is a very common sight where the turtle hatchlings, they move towards the artificial light, considering that this is sun, and many times they die on the road as roadkill. And they may simply get disoriented and lose their time, very precious time they have in the very beginning when they come out of the nests, and they may get predated just because they are disoriented. So similar thing happens with owls, and many times owls, they die in the roadkills while they're passing through the roads because of the headlights or because of the intense light. They can't see properly. Their eyes are not made for such intense light, and then they lose their orientation. They may simply collapse, or they may simply get killed because they are losing time. So in fact, this is a problem with all the nocturnal animals. It's not only about owls, but it is general problem that you see in the most of the nocturnal animals. Okay, so light pollution can do a lot many things. It can disorient animals. It can uh, it can sometimes congregate them at one place. For example, you might have seen spotted owlets congregating at a lamp post because insects congregate at that site. So they might be just using lamp post uh, uh, as a advantageous post for killing insects. Uh, the light can also introduce stress, and because of which the reproductive activity of birds and owls might decrease, and they may not reproduce efficiently. Sometimes the light pollution can also reduce the reproductive activity of plants, and the blooms may not happen. And of course, the stress is also something that can affect at multiple levels when there is light in the environment of nocturnal animals. Well, some species looks like they have adapted to the urban night or the urban light, such as spotted owlet and barn owl. But definitely, most of the forest owls, they look like they are not adapted to the light because of their lifestyle and because of their unique features. So I'm coming to the end of the lecture. So the raptors are generally looked upon as they provide a lot many ecosystem services, including the regulating, cultural, and supporting services. And raptors are many times used as flagship species, umbrella species, as well as for species for conservation. And there is a tremendous amount of ecological and evolutionary research that's happening on their population ecology, spatial as well as movement ecology. In India, again, there are only a few owl researchers working currently, and there is nothing much happening in the field of owl science in India. Well, we have come up with some initiatives, and perhaps that will result into some results. But overall, the working proportion of ornithologist in owl research is very little as compared to any other taxa. There are definite challenges like hunting, farming, human habitats, and rewilding. These are the main challenges when we talk about the raptors. So there are definitely some avenues available for researchers to come forward and study the owls of India. We have a good proportion of species of owls in India, and definitely together we can come up with better strategies for conservation and research. But yeah, there is a lot of gap in knowledge as well. Okay, so to conclude, owls, the darkness or the night part of the 24-hour cycle is a very essential part for the life in general, and for owls in especially. And owls are really one of the most amazing birds out there. And it's just that we are not able to, I think, gauge these characteristics, or we are just able to underestimate them. There's nothing scary about them. They do not indicate any omen. For an owl researcher, they are definitely a good omen. If you are not an owl researcher, they do not indicate any omen. If you are feeling happy to see owls around you, yes, they are real beautiful birds. Owl sacrifice is a nonsense, so please don't believe in it. Owls are suffering a lot because of all the anthropogenic factors and all the problems that we have created. And owl conservation is definitely a way forward to a sustainable future if we really understand the value right now. So, as a researcher, I have started a group called Owl India. This is a Facebook as well as a iNaturalist community, and we have around 2,000 members in it. And this is a group dedicated to owls, so only owl discussions are encouraged in it. Any other raptor and bird are not encouraged at all. So, if you want, you can join that. It's a Facebook group, and also it is a iNaturalist community where we are collecting a lot of data on owls of India. And you can check my website for the details of the projects which are currently running in my lab. So there is a group of people who are working on collecting more data on the owls of India and doing some owl informatics work. So you can definitely contact me about any owl queries if you have. We are also doing a lot of outreach, also writing a lot many articles about owls. And I think we I mean, I myself personally feel that this is really an amazing taxa to work on. They are nocturnal, yes. They may look scary. Yeah, I mean, it all depends on how you look at them. But just experience this one time, and I have done this many times. And in every field trip, wherever I go, whenever it is dusk time, you just relax, take a position. Generally be on a vantage point, sit relaxed. You will find that as the diurnal bird's activity reduces, there is a complete silence. There is a complete silence. And then the nocturnal birds start calling. And that is the really best time of your life you will enjoy. You will listen to them. Nightjars will be calling. There will be owls which will be calling. And you just listen to them, close your eyes, and then try to identify them, try to understand this voice of the nature. This is something that I learned when I was doing my field work in Andamans, and that's one of the best experiences I have had. And I think that is also something that particular experience turned me into an owl scientist. So thank you all for listening to this talk. I'm really sorry for technical glitches. We are open for questions. I hope I have not exceeded the time. So we have some time. I can take the questions right now.
Thank you very much, Pankaj. It was wonderful. Can you just go through the chat box?
Yeah.
It's just popping up. So,
Okay.
so there is a question from Vineet. I think it's came to privately to me. Is there a possibility of for forest owlet in Satpuras? Do owls prey indulge bigger owls such as eagle owl? Two questions.
Okay. So first question, yeah. Is there possibility for forest owlet in Satpuras? Well, they are found in Satpura mountain ranges in certain parts. In Khandwa district, yes, they are there. But yeah, so yes, they are there. In certain more parts, perhaps they are there, but we don't know. I mean, people are still conducting surveys, and new data will come up. Do all owls swallow prey, including bigger owls such as eagle owl? I think yes. but I can check it up and I can come, I can get back to you regarding this. Okay, so what's the effect of torch on owls at night? It's really bad. So if you have a very intense torch, please don't, put it on their eyes. They, it's just like us. Like if you put the torch on your eyes, you will really get blinded for some time, right? So these are animals which are sensitive to light. They are the nocturnal birds. So you can imagine how much there is, a lot more effect of torch on the owls at night. So please, if you are going for owl searching, first listen to them, locate them, and don't ever put the torch directly on the owl. Perhaps you can reflect it. You can put the torch on a tree or something which is not directly on the owl, if you really want to see the owl. Okay. So yeah, and yeah, thanks for raising that question. Many photographers directly use very intense flash, so please don't do that. You can use indirect light, or many times it's just better to do not disturb them. Okay. Have anybody seen Hume's owl or tawny owl in Bangalore areas? I am not really sure about that. I can check up some data and I can get back to you. What are the features of the habitats of owls? Are there any particular trees that owls associated with? So most of the owls are, they dwell in the tree hollows, and these tree hollows, depending upon the size of the owl, it's for a bigger owl, it may require a bigger tree hollow, and for a smaller, it requires smaller. So depending upon that, the tree they associated with will be either old growth tree or a younger tree. There are also some species of owls like spotted owlet. They can also live in the crevices, or the Indian eagle owl. So the rocky crevices are also a very good nesting site for them. So yeah, I mean, there is no direct connection with the owls and the trees, but they just require a space which is safe from the predators, and that fits themselves and their nestlings. How many subspecies of barn owl are there in India? Again, I'm not really sure of it. I need to check some data to come back. But as far as I remember, it's Tyto alba alba. But I think worldwide there are many subspecies. But again, for these specific questions, I'm not sure. Okay. What is the purpose of the ear tufts some owls have? So the ear tufts are generally a feather extension, and they may scare away predators. So that could be the function. But otherwise, they are not real ears. Real ears are located somewhere else. So I think scaring away the predators, or looking more aggressive, is something, perhaps is the purpose of the ear tufts. What is the correlation of photoreceptive cells in owls, those which are found in rural areas and those which are found in highly illuminated areas? This is a very interesting question. So I am not really sure of this, because I haven't come across a study like this. But this really, I mean, it could get converted to a really a nice study. It's just that, I mean, if you think of this particular study, then we perhaps will need to dissect owls, or take out samples, and that could be something which is complicated. But thanks for that question. It's really interesting. Can a large tree have bats and owls together, or they avoid each other? I'm not really sure. Personally, I have not come across such an observation where in a single tree hollow bats and owls are together. But I have observations of caves in which owls and bats were found. So yeah, perhaps they are not avoiding each other. What is the migratory status of owls in India? Most of the owls that we have are resident birds. Only few are migratory. They sometimes do local migration, but most of the owls are resident. I think around 90% of the owls could be the resident owls. Why ears are asymmetrically positioned? Any evolutionary reason behind it? Yeah, so the ears are asymmetrically positioned so that they capture the noise coming from the prey at different time intervals. So there is a time gap of 0.003 seconds between the left and the right ear. So because of this time interval, uh, So they basically get to know how far the prey is and what is the depth of the prey. And also they have very well developed vision. So using the vision, the signals coming to the left ear, the right ear, they can locate the prey in a proper manner. So this is something called triangulation method, which is also used for uh, many other applications that we use. Any initiative by government to stop owl sacrifice in India? Well, there is a lot of public outreach that's happening, and that is not directly from the government agencies, mainly from the NGOs and the institutes which are concerned with the research in owls. And well, there is, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I don't really know if there is any initiative by government to stop owl sacrifices. So yeah, I'm really sorry, I'm not able to answer this question. Okay. Okay, where can I give my articles? Are they concentrated only to owls? So, okay, so yeah, so if you're writing articles on owls, you can, there are multiple popular magazines which are out there like Sanctuary Asia, Savage, Planet Untamed, and so on, and BNHS, Hornbill, and so on. So you can definitely publish it there. You can also write blogs, circulate in Facebook, social media. You can also send it to us. I will publish it on my website, or circulate it on Owl India, and so on. Well, where they make nest, they generally use tree hollows or crevices. Is seeing with one eye while keeping the other eye closed an owl thing? Have you seen any other bird doing this? So, no, I'm not. I have not seen this, Kasturi. Perhaps the owl is blinking at you. Okay, moving forward. Any adaptation that owls are adapted for light pollution? Not really sure of that, because very little studies from India. I mean, almost nothing about light pollution and Indian owls. So not really able to tell you this. What owls do at daytime? I watched some spotted owls at daytime. What is the reason? Yeah, so most of the owls will be roosting at daytime, uh, meaning, in layman term, they will be sleeping at daytime. But yeah, there are some owls like spotted owls. Sometimes they get disturbed, so they come out from their hollow, or they just get disturbed and they make sounds. But mostly spotted owls are very active during nighttime as compared to the daytime. Is light pollution even affecting the owls in forests or national park? We believe that it might be affecting if there is intense light use, or if the tourists, in the tourism places, or in certain places where photographers know where the owl roosts are and they keep on going there. So yeah, in those places perhaps. But again, a very comprehensive study is lacking from our side. Do owls can see in daytime? Yeah, they can see in the daytime. There's no problem at all. Do all owls see in dark, or some of them are diurnal? Well, most of the owls are nocturnal and they can see at the night time, because of developed vision and other things. Well, the diurnal owls for us are very little known. The forest owlet is claimed to be diurnal species, and one reason, because there are many sightings in the daytime as compared to the nighttime. So one reason could be because there are many species of owls co-occurring in the same place. Perhaps to reduce the competition, some species may get adapted to the daytime than the nighttime. Okay, but again, majority of the owl that we see are nocturnal or the crepuscular species. Okay, through a friend, I came to know few people bait owls. Is this correct approach? This means baiting owls for food? Yeah, baiting is definitely a very invasive practice, and it can definitely affect their whole behavior and activities. So not at all good. Okay, are owl monogamous? This is a very interesting question. We are not really sure of this, because there are extra pair copulations which are observed in many species of owls. So yeah, they are not strictly honest to their partners, is what we know of. This is in general I'm talking. But Are all the owls monogamous? That I cannot really answer. Are owls territorial? Yeah, most of the owls are territorial, and during the breeding season, so the territories are an imaginary boundary basically, and in the breeding season, it becomes more and they become more and more rigid, and owls become more and more aggressive towards the intruding males. But yeah, most of the owls are territorial. Even their calls, the calls are of territorial as well as contact type. Is the asymmetrical position of ear affecting them badly? No, no, no. This is not at all affecting them badly. This is an evolutionary process by which they have developed this asymmetrical position of ear, which actually helps them in hunting properly. Okay, the next question is, can you share the recorded version of this session? I could join halfway only. Yeah, I think it's available, so you can see it. Next question is, we do see Indian eagle owl on Canal Cliff on roosting. I do repeat about, do owl migrate from original place of dwelling? If yes, why? So generally the bird migration relates to the resource location. So, in general birds migrate because their resources are not available or they are moved. So the insectivorous birds migrate because insects migrate and so on. So yeah, if there is resources which are not available, then the species may locally migrate. They may move from one place to another for some time. Then they perhaps go back to the original position. How do we get to know of future of such meetings? Okay, so David you can subscribe to their group and you will get to know about this. Okay, is there any study about light pollution in owls? Not, there is actually no study on owls, light pollution on owls. Yeah, there is no study. Okay. Is there any possibility of Oriental bay owl and Sri Lankan bay owl coexistence in the same area in India? In Western Ghats, there is only Sri Lankan bay owl. Well, yeah, that's true. I don't think there is a possibility right now because all the observations that we have, they show that they are allopatric in nature, meaning they don't have overlapping distribution. So yeah, if new data comes in, then perhaps we can talk in detail about it. So Meera Menon is saying it is the first time I have actually heard so much about owls. Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks a lot, Meera, for listening to my bad conversation and technically really bad way of delivering lectures. Okay, the next question is by NK Shende. Ecological services provided by owls, what their presence indicates about health of ecosystem. So it depends. Different species of owls specialize on different food. Smaller species generally go for smaller prey like insects and small mammals and small lizards, small reptiles. The bigger species can go for bigger birds as well as mammals. So if the owls are present in your area, it means their food is available in that area, and that basically indicates there is a whole food chain or the full ecosystem that is sort of existing in that area. So in case of urban areas, barn owls and spotted owlets are there because there is plenty to eat in the form of rodents, mouse and rats. So yeah, they are there. But if in the forest area, if you see species like spot-bellied eagle owl, which are huge owls, it really means that they are getting enough food, and they are there. It means that the resources are there. Okay. Do owls have various voices like mating, calling partner, alert? Yeah. Yes, they do have different voices. So in case of forest owlet, we know that there is a contact call, which is something like like this, and then there is a territorial, and then there is a breeding song as well. But we don't really know a lot about the owl calls. Most of the calls that we get are contact calls. So those are something that we can use for identification. Yeah, so I think I have almost come down to the answering all the questions. Yeah, I think yeah.
Also, if you can just put down your email ID if they have any questions.
Okay. Where shall I do it? I think
on the chat box.
Okay, or I can do it on my slide itself so that it's visible to everyone. Yeah, just a minute. Okay, I'm doing it.
Okay. Anyway, thank you so much, Pankaj. It was wonderful to hear you. We learned a lot about owls. And anyway, it's on behalf of Kottayam Nature Society and Alapi Naturalistic Society and all. We extend our thanks